the next step for installing these hammers, now that they are voiced, cut to length, cove, arc, tapered, I bored, obviously, is to figure out where to put them. So there's a couple ways to do this. One way that I think is it's a perfectly acceptable way, but frankly I think is an inferior way to do it, is to just have the old samples that you have on the ends of each section. In this piano there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sections, right? 5. You could hang the old hammers on and just kind of give an approximation of where the strike point is on those, and that assumes a couple things. One, it assumes that it was properly hung in the factory, which is not necessarily a given. They probably, I'm guessing they did a good job in the factory, but at the same time, these were mass produced. They probably had, well, these old-timey pictures. Look at that picture, that one in between line 4 and 5. Those are, of course, uprights, but I mean, it's a factory. I doubt that they're taking quite as fine care as hopefully we're taking. So my guess is they probably had a jig that they hung the hammers by. So like every model that they built, they probably just hung the hammers according to that jig and didn't necessarily listen for what the best strike point is. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to listen for the best strike point as opposed to just go off of the old dimension. Oh, the other thing that I was going to say is that we're also accounting for 100 years of wear. So one, if we do it the other way, we're assuming that it was hung correctly in the first place, and two, there is some fudgeability because things wear out, and so you're kind of trying to estimate where the proper strike point was. So I'm going to use this top note, this top C8 as my guide, since that's, well, the higher you get, the more touchy it is. As you move that hammer slightly towards the back or slightly towards the front, little tiny differences make a big difference. Whereas most of these notes, if you're basic, it's designed to be in a straight line, the way this fan is right here. Why don't you get a picture of this? When the plate is designed, that's called the scaling. Part of the scaling is designing it so that the hammers are in a straight line, but the strike point on these notes is going to be the ideal strike point. I can't remember. I think it's like 1/7 the length, the speaking length, or something like that is the ideal. I think I read that somewhere. I don't have experience with design, but I think I read that. So if you move it slightly one way or the other, on these long strings, it doesn't make a big difference. But in this part of the piano, your speaking length is only that long, and so slightly one way or the other makes a big difference. So we're just going to listen for the best strike point, and then once we determine, just based on ears, that sounds the best, that's where we're going to put the hammers, and we're going to go off of that one and then hang the rest of them according to that dimension. This is going to be a little bit tricky because this action is so tight, and we have to take it in and out a few times. Have you had a problem with this, AJ? I wonder why it's so tight. Okay, that's got to be it then. The bore on this hammer. So I've had different people come through the shop over the years that have had different preferences on the drill bit that they use, and different preferences on how tight or how loose the hammer is. And my personal preference, I like it looser, and then the glue kind of takes up the space.
I mean, if it's looser, it gives you like more flexibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
If the boring is not perfect.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. There are advantages and disadvantages of both, and my personal preference is pretty much. I like it how AJ has it, where you can turn it this way, up and down. Yeah, no, you can go up and down, but it is well within specs. And then okay, so to come up now with our strike point, obviously we need to fit it on there tightly. So this is why we need to move the action in and out several times. Well, kind of ruin that. Got a piece of tape in there. Well, maybe it'll work. So these are the original shanks, right? Okay, so we're just gonna try it at the tip there, at the tip of the shank, and see if it's ideal, if it sounds good. Okay, can somebody go under there and push the damper tray up? I think that must be what it was. Why it was so tight. Yep. Yeah, just push it up as high as it'll go. Okay, there it is. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, that's not bad. Right before I started this training, I tuned it up more or less. Just by plucking it and just by ear. I didn't use a thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be more or less in the right vicinity. Okay. Let's see. Grab a screwdriver out of here. So you can simulate moving the hammer back by lifting up the action like this with a screwdriver. So if you listen, so I think, what do you think? What is that?
Further back, it's touching the soundboard and like makes it quieter. Like,
is it touching the soundboard?
yeah, that's right there. It doesn't.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. As far as tone, it just makes it worse when you move it back. So we know that we're at least as far back as we want to go. So if I pull this out slightly, see if it makes things any better. So there's all the way back, the action all the way back. That's slightly forward. That's almost all the way back. And then here's all the way back. Well, I wonder if we're moving the. Yeah, that was definitely too far. I wonder if the tape isn't holding the hammer, because I seem to remember it sounding better than that. Okay, here's forward. Okay, now there it thins out too much. So I think the sweet spot is what do you think? Is that about right? Okay. So make sure that it's all the way down, and that when I pull it out, it's not gonna, yeah, that's exactly where I'm looking. I'm looking just to make sure that the hammer, because the action is totally out of, oh, hey, David. The action is totally out of regulation. So sometimes that hammer can be slightly too high when things are totally out of regulation. And if you don't check first and you pull it forward when things are way out, it'll snap the thing off. So just, it looks good though. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm not touching the right there. Okay, so what we determined, it looks like it hasn't really moved. So what we determined is we actually liked the tone better when it was slightly forward, like ever so slightly forward. So let's just try that. So now it's hard to see with that tape that I got stuck on top. But anyway, the way I had it before is I had it so that the top of the shank was basically flush with the hammer, and now if you can see carefully, in spite of all the tape, there's a little bit of a nub sticking out. Okay, so now let's experiment with that. Square that. Okay, just to confirm, because we're making 88 decisions based on this one. So now I have it all the way back on its stop blocks. Sounds okay. Okay, let's experiment a little bit. So going back a little further. Okay, that kind of died. That's good. What do you think? So lifting it up, which simulates going further back on the string, only makes it worse. Do we agree? Okay. Let's try bringing it forward again, ever so slightly. So I think what I'll do is I'll use this little line here on the key bed as sort of my my line to judge how far I'm pulling. Since it's so tight, it's hard to be like slight. Okay, so that was slight. Okay, it sounds more like echoey and distant, doesn't it? Okay, then if we lift it. That's kind of interesting. It's like more attack. That's maybe a little bit richer. Do you hear that? It's a different sound. So that's like more power, but it sounds thinner. Yeah. And then this one is less power, but it sounds richer. To my ears. I wonder how it's coming through on the video. I have no idea. But I guess what you can get on the video, right, is just the idea of what we're doing, and ultimately it's just up to the ears of the technician determining what sounds best. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So AJ, the hammer, we're good.
So you're leaving it just a hair forward
Mm-hmm.
the original?
Yep,
Okay.
that's right. There is actually a piano manufacturer in Arizona. He only does one piano a year, at least last I talked to him. Piano is called Ravenscroft, and they're super high-end pianos. They're like, I don't know, $250,000 or $300,000 or more, something like that. He only builds one a year, super high-end. And what he does is he actually doesn't do it this way. He, rather than having a straight line all the way across, he actually listens to, I think he does 3. He'll listen to one, he'll hang 3 hammers. Then he'll listen to this one, find the ideal spot for this one, hang these 3 hammers. Then he'll listen. And so the advantage of that is that it probably sounds amazing. I mean, it like improves this tone. But the disadvantage, as far as I'm concerned, is that the hammer line isn't straight. Yeah, it's going to be all wonky. But, like, it is cool. It's super cool. Yeah, Mike Spreeman is his name. He's a good guy. He taught me in a Renner course a few years ago, and that's where I learned about that he does it that way. So super cool, but I don't know. I guess it's like the anal side of me, or maybe it's the
rule.
the rule. What's the rule?
If it looks good, it sounds good.
Right, exactly. So, so yeah, there you have it. AJ, use this as your line. What I'd like you to do now is put this section end on here, and then straight line at where it counts is the strike point, right? Okay. All right.
Cool. Yeah. How do you determine where the hammer goes on the other end? Just visually with the hammer shank?
Yeah, when it's, I think, let's try it. Why don't we try it and see if we can hear any difference as we pull it in and out. So we go grab note 71. This one will be easier because we're using the original shanks, and so I can just use the original shanks as a reference point. So if that one we have a slight nub sticking out the top, I guess I'll do the same thing here. Have a slight little nub hanging out the top. I guess, you know, there's a lot of play there too. So I guess the moral of that story is there's a lot of interpretation / artistry involved in this, right? Okay, that's a little tighter. Thanks, Curtis. Oh, yes, we do. Okay. Will you go play, Victoria? We play the G6. We're going to, yeah, I'll put that in.
I think she's full.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. Do it again.
Oh.
AJ, when you're doing this, be sure that you have the, so I had to give it some good force to make sure that the action is all the way against the stop block. I find myself, like my thumbs are getting sore from doing this. So if you do it like that, that gives you more leverage, and you're really pushing on it pretty hard, okay? I like the tone. It's not making that much of a difference. A little bit. Okay, what does everybody think? Anybody want to experiment with it? Anybody want to try?
Yeah.
The hammer fall off? Okay. All right, let's get it tighter.
Twist a little bit.
Or did it twist?
Yeah, twisted. Looks like it.
Okay. And just make sure, AJ, make sure that when you, so it's easy to accidentally get this caught on the spring there, the shift spring. So just be sure that you kind of turn it in an angle, and then you get it on the shift spring, and then you can kind of squeeze the shift spring on that side to get it in over there. And then you can just go straight back, okay?
Is that just with this piano specifically? Or?
It's with a lot of pianos. It's not every one, but it's a lot of them. Okay. Okay, you want to keep experimenting, Curtis?
back just a little bit. I liked it back just a little bit. It was a little bit.
It seems to
fuller.
me like how it sounds now is kind of similar to the other one, how it like had more attack when it was
Mm-hmm.
back a little bit.
And then when it goes back a little bit more, Mike was saying that
Back a little bit more, it's maybe more similar.
it sounds
to
a
that
little bit
tone.
fuller.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so we can deal with that in a couple of ways. Either we can change the angle of the hammer, because there's a lot of play in there, right? Or we can move the whole thing back, right? Keep the angle the same. No, just where the hammer connects to the shank. So there's some play this way, or you can move it this way. And right now we have the little nub sticking out. So maybe if we move it back, keep the angle the same, so that the nub isn't on the end.
You also put the tape on the front, so that would force the hammer back, right? No, it would force the hammer head. So you have the tape on the front. It would force back just a little bit.
He's saying
It was working in my head.
okay. He's saying change the location of the tape to change the angle. Okay. Well, I think we're good. I think you get the idea, and you can fiddle with it a little bit more if you want to. But I think you're there, and you're ready to hang.